Hi folks, I'm recording this on the 12th of January, so we have almost the entire reading year ahead of us. And I thought it'd be interesting to look to see what new books are going to be released this year that we might like to read. I don't claim this to be a comprehensive list. It's what I've been able to glean from various sources around the internet, including a couple of other booktube channels actually. So I'll put the whole list and links if they exist in the description, and we're going to break it into three chunks. There will be books that I'm really personally excited about that I will definitely want to read. And then there's a middling group where I'm tempted, just based on the description, but I'm not 100% sure yet. I probably want to handle the book and have a look at it and see. And then there's another group that I'm not especially interested in at first blush, but that you might like the sound of, and so we'll cover those at the end. The first book, and not the first entry, from Adrian Tchaikovsky is Shroud, which is due to come out at the end of February. And I've already snagged the copy, actually. The Broken Binding are doing a nice special edition, which I should take delivery of around the end of February, maybe early March. So I like the sound of this. This is an out-and-out space opera from the sound of it, and the blurb on the back goes something like this. They looked into darkness, and the darkness looked back. It's very cinematic sounding, isn't it? An utterly gripping, allegedly, story of survival and first contact on hostile planet. Apparently, a commercial expedition to a distant star system discovers a pitch-black moon alive with radioactivity. Its high-gravity, high-pressure, zero-oxygen environment is deadly to human life, but ripe for exploitation. They name it Shroud. Under no circumstances can a human survive Shroud's inhospitable surface, but a catastrophic accident forces Juno Sealander and Mai Saint Etienne to make an emergency landing in a barely adequate escape vehicle. Alone and fighting for survival, the two women embark on a grueling journey across land, sea and air in search of salvation. But as they travel, Juno and Mai begin to understand Shroud's unnerving alien species. And I must say, one of Adrian Tchaikovsky's strengths is his ability to conjure an alien ecosystem. I'm thinking here of the spiders of Children of Time. Is that a spoiler? Doesn't everyone know it's got spiders? Well, too late now. The spiders in Children of Time, and then the alien ecosystem on the planet whose name escapes me. What the hell's it called? Can't remember. In Alien Clay, and similarly in Cage of Souls, where it's on Earth, but it's an ecosystem run amok. He's pretty good at that stuff, so I'm expecting more of the same in this. So this alien species apparently begins to understand them. If they escape Shroud, they'll somehow have to explain the impossible and translate the incredible. That is, if they make it back at all. So that sounds like they've got some long trek and beaucoup de peril along the way, and I'm up for a space adventure. Apparently it's clever, vivid and terrifying, says Jim Al-Khalili, who's the British version of Bill Nye Science Guy in the US, and the author of Altered Carbon. Richard Morgan says it's crunchy, conceptual SF at its best. And this is hard-edged science fiction that never loses its soul, says Subak, who's the author of Semiosis. Next is one from Gareth Powell, a British science fiction author who I'm ashamed to say, despite his fairly extensive output, I've never read anything by him, and I don't think I've even got any of his books on my shelf. So I will buy a copy of Future's Edge. I like to support British authors. And apparently this is a gripping and heartfelt, horror-tinged space adventure, and I do like a space adventure, from award-winning author of Stars and Bones and Embers. Readers of James S.A. Cory, so they read The Expanse, of course, will love this fast-paced story of space piracy, deadly alien artifacts, and a race to save what is left of humanity. So that sounds like a epic widescreen cinematic kind of gig, and I'm all up for that. So I'll read that, and that might well be the first Gareth Powell novel that I actually read. And if I enjoy it, I'll go and seek out some of his back catalogue as well. If you've read any of Gareth Powell's books and enjoyed them, then do let me know in the comments. Allegedly, it's a thrilling, page-turning journey into deep space, where the fights are brutal, the relationships are complicated, and the world ended years ago. The next book is Where the Axe is Buried, from Ray Nayler, he of Mountains of the Sea and Tusks of Extinction, and novella last year. This is a full-fat novel as far as I can tell. So all systems fail, all societies crumble, all world's end. In the authoritarian federation, there is a plot to assassinate and replace the president, a man who has downloaded his mind to a succession of new bodies to maintain his grip on power. Meanwhile, on the fringes of a Western Europe that has renounced human governance in favour of a more efficient and objective and peaceful AI prime ministers, an experimental artificial mind is malfunctioning, threatening to set off a chain of events that may spell the end of the Western world. Amidst that as a background, Lilia is a brilliant scientist whose invention may be central to bringing down this seemingly immortal president, and she has to go on the run, trying to break out from a near impenetrable web of Federation surveillance, and her fate is bound up with a worldwide group of others fighting against the global status quo. Yes, so this is a near-future world of geopolitical espionage, a cybernetic novel of political intrigue, combining the story of a near-impossible revolutionary operation with a blistering indictment of the many forms of authoritarianism that suffocate human freedoms. That sounds very portentous. I did enjoy Mountains in the Sea, and I quite enjoyed Tusks of Extinction. It was pretty disposable, I thought, but I enjoyed it. I read it and enjoyed it. So I will be getting hold of a copy of, what's this called? Something to do with axes? Yeah, Where the Axe is Buried by Ray Nayler. I'll be getting a hold of a copy of that when it comes out. The next is a book by an author that I've not heard of. I'm not sure if it's her debut or if I've just missed her. This is We Lived on the Horizon by Erika Swler, and this is a novel about a bioprosthetic surgeon and her personal AI as they are drawn into a catastrophic war. The city of Bulwark is aptly a walled city built to protect and preserve the people who managed to survive a series of great cataclysms. And Bulwark is founded on a system where sacrifices are rewarded by the AI that runs the city. There's another AI running things. Over the course of generations, an elite class has evolved from the descendants of those who gave up the most to found mankind's last stronghold, called the Sainted. Saint Anita Malovis is long accustomed to luxury, apparently, and feels the end of her life and decades of work as a bioprosthesist approaching. The lone practitioner of her art, Anita is determined to preserve her legacy and decides to create a physical being called Nyx, filled with her knowledge and experience. In the midst of her project, a fellow Sainted is brutally murdered, and the city AI inexplicably erases the event from its data, and soon Anita and Nyx are drawn into the growing war that could change everything between the Bulwark's hidden underclass and the programs that impose and maintain order. Complex, imaginative, and allegedly unforgettable. So I don't know, but that's probably not highest on my list of desired new reading from this year. But I think I'll probably get hold of a copy of that. I do like a far future history, and I like the notion of there being a sort of deep history, and I like a bit of body horror as much as the next person. The next book is Symbiote by Michael Nayak, another author that I've not heard of. World War III rages, and the scientists at the South Pole are thankful for the isolation until a group of Chinese scientists arrive at the US base with a dead man in their truck. The potential for a geopolitical firestorm is great, and with no clear jurisdiction, poor old Americans don't know what to do, but they soon realise that the Chinese scientists have brought far more with them than the body. You could predict that, couldn't you? Within 72 hours, 13 others lie dead in the snow, murdered in acts of madness and superhuman strength. An extremophile parasite from the truck, triggered by severe cold, is spreading by touch. With rescue impossible for months, it is learning from them, evolving. It triggers violent tendencies in the winter crew, and more insidiously, the beginnings of a strange symbiotic telepathy. This guy is a exciting new voice in science fiction, apparently, and this is a propulsive SF thriller. Sounds kind of Michael Crichton-esque with a touch of like zombie rage virus to it, Apparently it's infused with authentic details about life in one of the world's harshest, most mysterious landscapes, Antarctica. Yeah, that sounds like if you like a good Crichton thriller, then that's probably right up your street. I like the sound of it. It sounds like a good holiday read, if I can damn it with faint praise. The next book is The Third Rule of Time Travel by Philip I can't say his name. Fracassi. I expect it's Fracassi, but I keep wanting to say Fricassee. I'm sure that's not right. But anyway, there are apparently rules for time travel. Rule 1 is travel can only occur to a point within your lifetime. Rule 2, you can only travel for 90 seconds. And Rule 3, you can only observe, and these rules cannot be broken. In this allegedly riveting science fiction novel from acclaimed author Philip Fracassi, a scientist has unlocked the mysteries of time travel. This is not the story that you think you know, though, and the rules are only the beginning. Scientist Beth Darlow has discovered the unimaginable. She's built a machine that allows human consciousness to travel through time to any point in the traveller's lifetime and relive moments of their life. An impossible breakthrough, but the traveller has no way to interact with the past. After Beth's husband, the co-creator of the machine, dies in a tragic car accident, Beth is left to raise their daughter and continue the work that they started. Mired in grief and threatened by her ruthless chief exec, Beth pushes herself to the limit to prove the value of her technology. Then the impossible happens. Simply viewing personal history should not alter the present, but with each new observation she makes, her own timeline begins to warp, which I'm sure leads to all manner of timey-wimey implications. So I like a good time travel tale. I like a good paradox, and the books that immediately spring to mind when I think of this one are Connie Willis's All Clear and Blackout, which I really enjoyed, were among my favourite reads of the year, I think in 2023. And that notion that, you shouldn't be able to impact, that you should be able to safely time travel and not be able to impact the timeline gets a little bit undone in those books. Or it seems to, at least, and I like that notion that things have gone awry, and with a bit of time travel-y, as I say, timey-wimey stuff layered in over the top. So I do like the sound of that. The next book that I like the sound of is Dissolution by Nicholas Binge. I think it's Binge as opposed to Bingy. I'm not doing a very good job of pronouncing people's names, am I? In the unlikely event, Nicholas, that you're watching, apologies. A woman dives into her husband's memories to uncover a decades-old feud threatening reality itself in this staggering techno thriller from the best-selling author of Ascension, which I haven't read. So I don't know if this is a sequel or just another standalone novel by the same guy. Maggie Walsh has lived the last decade caring for her elderly husband, Stanley, as memory loss gradually erases all of the beautiful moments they created together. It's the loneliest that she's ever felt in her life. When a mysterious stranger named Hassan appears at her door, he reveals a shocking truth. Stanley isn't losing his memories, someone is actively removing them to hide a long-buried secret from coming to light. If Maggie does what she's told, she can reverse it. She can get her husband back. Led by Hassan and his tech marvels, Maggie breaks into her husband's mind, probing the depths of his past in an effort to save him. The deeper she dives, the more she unravels in a mystery spanning continents and centuries, each layer more complex than the last. But Hassan can't be trusted. Not just memories are disappearing, but pieces of reality itself. If Maggie can't find out what Stanley did all those years ago and what Hassan is after now, she risks far more than her husband's life. The very course of human history hangs in the balance. So that sounds, I mean, it's probably a kind of disposable thriller in the style of Blake Crouch, but there's a place for those on my shelves, at least temporarily. So I might wait until that comes out in paperback before chucking it on my wish list to get at some point. And there are a few other books that are coming out that there's very little information about. There's Bee Speaker, but again by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and that's the third book following Dogs of War and Barehead, which is set in a world where there are bioforms who are genetically engineered or constructed animals, but with human DNA and human intelligence, kind of. And the Dogs of War focuses on Rex and his squad of kind of special forces bioforms, and then Barehead focuses on Honey, who's the bear in that squad of special forces bioforms, and what she becomes as a different story entirely to Dogs of War. And then the third novel in that series is something called that will be called Bee Speaker, as I understand it, and that will focus on the distributed intelligence that is bees. Who was one of the more interesting characters, who did play a part in Barehead as well. So I'm interested to read that. She was one of the more intriguing members of the Bioform team. Another book that's coming out, but not until very late 2025, and it wouldn't hugely surprise me if it didn't arrive until early 2026, but the author swears blind that it's going to arrive in 2025. I think he's finished writing it, he's now kind of editing it down, and that's going to be the 7th book in the Sun Eater series, which is going to be called Shadows Upon Time. There is nothing about the blurb or the content of it or release dates or anything like that online other than what it's called. But presumably since we know how the series finishes based on the first page of the first book, it ends with Hadrian Marlowe blowing up a sun to finish off the Cielcin and taking a bunch of the Empire's great and the good with him. So presumably it includes that rather spectacular denouement. It certainly feels like the series is kind of coming to a crescendo, so that will provide that fitting end, I think. So I'm looking forward to that. I've been enjoying that series in the last year or so, and I've got book 6, Disquiet Gods, to read before that comes out. I don't know that I'll go straight for the hardback when it comes out. I probably will wait for I might just get it on audiobook, because I'm going to, in the fullness of time, I will have the special edition from Broken Binding when it comes out, probably in 2026. I think that'll be. Another book that might or might not be coming out, there's not a placeholder for it, but I imagine they're going to be going on a pretty fast cadence, is the second book in the Captives War trilogy, I think it's going to be. So book 1 was The Mercy of Gods, that came out last summer, and I'm expecting the second book, don't know what that's called, to come out in the summer of this year. But that's a bit of a guess on my part. I can't swear to that, but I imagine they're on an annual cadence now. I expect they've already written the books. So those are the books that I'm most interested in. There's another 5 or 6 here that I'm curious about, and we'll take a closer look when they come out. The first of those is Bethany Jacobs on Vicious World, and this is a sequel to These Burning Stars, which I haven't actually read yet. I've got it on my shelves. I got it for Christmas in 2023, actually. I haven't got around to reading it yet. One of the most exciting new voices in space opera apparently returns with the thrilling sequel to, as I said, These Burning Stars. And that was her explosive space opera debut that launched the dangerous cat and mouse quest for revenge that will define a pupil forever. I wish I could do a proper cinematic voiceover voice to do that justice. Another book that I'll probably get is Jack Campbell's Destiny's Way, which is the second book in what I think is going to be a trilogy. Yeah, the second book in the Doomed Earth trilogy, the first one being In Our Stars, which again I've got on my shelves but I haven't got around to reading yet. And I can't find any blurb about it, but that book will come this year, I think. The next book that I might be interested in is The Shattering Piece by John Scalzi, who's another productive author who chunks out 2 or 3 books a year. For a decade, peace has reigned in interstellar space. You get the sense that might not be for long. A tripartite agreement between the colonial union, the Earth and the alien conclave has kept the forces of war at bay. I think this is a new book in the Old Man's War sequence, of which there are now many, I think. But there is a new force that threatens the hard, maintained peace. The Consort, the most advanced intelligent species that humans have ever met, are on the cusp of a species-defining civil war. The colonial union, the Earth and the conclave are at risk of being dragged into the conflict, whether they want to be involved or not. Gretchen Trujillo is a former colonial union diplomat. She's trying to forge a new life away from the conflicts of nations, human and alien. But when she's called to take part in a secret mission involving representatives from every powerful faction in space, what she finds there has the chance to redefine the destinies of each or to destroy them. So that sounds like it's a high-stakes gig. I've only read Old Man's War, of that Old Man's War sequence, of which there are now 5 or 6, I think. So I should probably fix that. It was several years ago that I read Old Man's War, and I don't remember a huge amount about it apart from the basic plot thread of it. So I probably should give that a reread and then hit the rest at some point. The next book that I'm kind of interested in is All the Water in the World by Eiren Caffall. And this is in the tradition, it says in the blurb, of Station 11, a literary thriller set partly on the roof of New York's Museum of Natural History in a flooded future. So this book is told in the voice of a girl who's been gifted with a deep feeling for water. Well, apart from wetness, I imagine. In the years after the glaciers melt, Nonnie and her older sister and her parents and their researcher friends have stayed behind in an almost deserted New York City, creating a settlement on the roof of the American Museum of Natural History. The rule is take from the exhibits only in dire need. They hunt and grow their food in Central Park as they work to save the collections of human history and science. When a superstorm breaches the city's flood walls, Nonnie and her family must escape north on the Hudson. They carry with them a book that holds their records of the lost collections. Racing on the swollen river to what may be safety, they encounter communities that have adapted in very different and sometimes frightening ways to the new reality. And I suppose that's where the comparison with Station 11 comes from. Plus there's the end of the world, I suppose. But they're determined to find a way to make a new world that honours all that they've saved. And apparently this is inspired by the stories of curators in Iraq and Leningrad who worked to protect their collections from war. All the Water in the World is both a meditation on what we save from collapse and an adventure story with danger, storms and a fight for survival. To my mind, it reminds me, although I haven't read it, it reminds me of the premise of George Turner's The Sea and Summer, in which, in this case, Melbourne in Australia gets flooded and there are people living in the upper stories of skyscrapers. Conjures a similar image for me. The next one that I'm sort of curious about is The Way Up is Death by Dan Hanks. When a mysterious tower appears in the skies over England, 13 strangers are pulled from their lives to stand before it as a countdown begins. Above the doorway is one word: ascend. Already that's reminded me a little bit of a book I read recently, Cathani by Eric Brown. A bunch of towers appear all over the world for the purposes of improving humanity. And as a grieving teacher, a reclusive artist and a narcissistic celebrity children's author lead the others in trying to understand why they've been chosen and what the tower is, it soon becomes clear that the only way out of this for everyone is up. The next book that I might be interested in is Picks and Shovels by Cory Doctorow. This is a return to the world of Red Team Blues, and this is the origin story of Martin Hench. So this is a throwback to the 80s. The year is 1986, the city is San Francisco, and here Martin Hench will invent the forensic accountant. What a bounty hunter is to people, he is to money. But for now, he's an MIT dropout, odd-jobbing his way around a city, still reeling from the invention of a revolutionary technology that will change everything about crime forever, one that we now take completely for granted. I haven't read Red Team Blues, but I've read 1 or 2 of Cory Doctorow's books, and he's an interesting person, so I ought to read that. Do let me know if you've read Red Team Blues and if it's something that I should pick up as well. There's a new book here by the author of Mickey 7, which is a book I've heard a lot about but don't own and haven't read. That's Edward Ashton is the author, and the book is The Fourth Consort. Dalton Greaves is a hero. He's one of humankind's first representatives to unity, a pan-species confederation working to bring all sentient life into a single benevolent brotherhood. Shades of Star Trek's Federation there, of course. That's what they told him, anyway. The only actual members of Unity that he's ever met are Borrow, a giant snail who seems more interested in plunder than spreading love and harmony, and Borrow's human sidekick, Neera, who Dalton strongly suspects roped him into this gig so that she wouldn't become the next one of Borrow's meals. Funny thing though, it turns out that there actually is a benevolent confederation out there working for the good of all life. They call themselves the Assembly, and they really don't like Unity. More to the point, they really, really don't like Unity's new human minions. So it's a little bit First Contact, a little bit dark comedy, and a little bit bizarre love triangle, and asks an important question: how far would you go to survive? And more importantly, how many drinks would you need to go there? So that sounds somewhat light-hearted and maybe worth your time. Next, we come to just a handful of books that didn't really float my boat, but they might float yours. I cast no aspersions. I haven't read them, so what do I know? But the first of those is Space Brooms by A.G. Rodriguez, and this is a fun sci-fi romp where a custodian or space broom, a janitor, I guess, Johnny Gomez, teams up with smugglers and is thrust into an unforgettable adventure. Apparently a great read for fans of Stringers by Chris Panatier, a book and an author I've not heard of. The next one is The Immeasurable Heaven by Casper Geon, an entirely alien cast race across the multiverse in search of a priceless map of the realities in this thrilling cosmic space opera. And all right, I'm up for a space opera, so maybe that's not as iffy as it first appeared. I don't know how lightweight that is. And then there's Volatile Memory from Seth Haddon, and apparently this is Ex Machina meets This Is How You Lose the Time War. Seth Haddon's science fiction debut, Volatile Memory, is a heart-filled, vengeful, sapphic sci-fi adventure novella, and I'll leave it there. Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. Life has thrown Zelu some curveballs over the years, but when she's suddenly dragged from her university job and her latest novel is rejected, all in the middle of her sister's wedding, her life is upended. Disabled, unemployed, and from a nosy, high-achieving, judgmental family, she's not sure what comes next. In her hotel room that night, she takes the risk that will define her life. She decides to write a book, very unlike her others, a science fiction drama about androids and AI and after the extinction of humanity. And then everything changes. And then there's Terms of Service by C.L. Pialot. When her cousin gets kidnapped by a dastardly trickster, Lucia is forced to sell herself in servitude to the Eoi in exchange for his life. But the terms of the deal turn out to be much more complicated than she can ever have imagined. And then we've got one which does sound like good fun, actually, to be fair. Scales by Christopher Hines. Eddie Bocker's first combat mission is a success until he's overwhelmed by raging compulsion and eats an enemy soldier. His cannibalism threatens to derail the plans of Blavine Industries, whose secret project has genetically enhanced Eddie and 3 other prototypes with, you guessed it, reptilian DNA. An electrifying thriller about species re-engineering run amok. Scales is a great, fast-paced read, perfect, apparently, for fans of Jurassic Park. So yeah, it's a kind of sub-Crichton thriller from the sound of it. And then there's The Dream Hotel by Layla Lalami. And this is a riveting and utterly original novel about one woman's fight for freedom, set in a far future where even dreams are under surveillance. I wonder how utterly original it actually is. Sarah has just landed at LAX, returning home from a conference abroad, when agents from the Risk Assessment Administration pull her aside and inform her that she will soon commit a crime. Well, already it's not very fucking original, is it? That's the plot from Minority Report, of course, by Philip K. Dick. So there's a future crimes division here. Using data from her dreams, the RAA's algorithm has determined that she is at imminent risk of harming the person that she loves the most, her husband. And for his safety, she must be kept under observation for 21 days. And then we've got One Level Down by Mary G. Thompson, where trapped in a child body, a resourceful woman risks death by deletion from a simulated world, which is apparently Taut's an ultimately hopeful story that definitely explores identity and autonomy. And then there's Automatic Noodle by Annalee Newitz, who's the author of The Terraformers, amongst other things. And this is apparently a cozy near-future novella about a crew of abandoned food service bots that open their very own restaurant. And finally here we've got When the Moon Hits Your Eye by John Scalzi. And in this book is apparently what's an entirely serious take on the distinctly unserious subject. What would really happen if suddenly the moon were replaced by a giant wheel of cheese? There are a few notable absences, actually, at least from my perspective. Adam Roberts, who tends to churn out books with metronomic regularity, usually approximately once a year. There is no book coming from him. He does have a couple on the boil. There's a book called Frankenstein Rex, which he thinks will come out in 2026. And there's also Grail by Adam Roberts, which will be the 4th book in the Aftermath series, which he's shared the writing duties with Dave Hutchinson. And it's a series that I've been enjoying very much. And that will probably be 2026 as well. There might be a sequel to Exodus by Peter F. Hamilton. I don't know how quickly he's chunking through that. I haven't seen anything about it. Let me know if you've heard any different. Chris Beckett does not have a book coming out in 2025, although he's working on one, A Generation Ship Tale, based on what he told me last year. Do any of those float your boat, or are they all too modern or contemporary for your grumpy old cynical selves? And that's my default resting position, I suppose. But as I say, many of those do sound interesting to me, and I will certainly be putting my hand in my pocket for several of them. Do Do let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye for now.